Good evening from Washington. I'm Brett Baer, in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Let's get right to our top story. New details and disturbing questions about suspected New York and New Jersey bomber Ahmaud Rahami. Rahami's father making the stunning revelation that he reported his son to federal authorities back in 2014.
2 years ago, I called the API. My son's doing very bad, okay? But they checked it almost 2 months.
Investigation is still going on, guys.
He's okay.
We don't know yet.
He's not terrorist. I said, okay. Now he say he's a terrorist. I said, okay. He's doing bad.
He's doing bad? Where would he do bad?
He stopped my son. He hit my wife, and I put him in the jail 4 years ago.
Who's he? What son did he stab?
Nasser.
Okay, what happened? Why did he stab him?
That was for no reason.
He also says the FBI dropped the ball. But today, the Bureau released a statement confirming they looked into Ahmaud Rahami 2 years ago and came up with nothing alarming. On the campaign trail, both presidential candidates are making their case to voters that they would be the better terror warrior.
I'm the only candidate in this race who's been part of the hard decisions to take terrorists off the battlefield. What I've laid out is a path forward that will keep us safer, protect our country, and go after the terrorists to finally destroy them.
In the 20th century, the United States defeated fascism, Nazism, and communism. Now we must defeat radical Islamic terrorism.
Joining us here with reaction in Washington, Sebastian Gorka, author of the best-selling book, Defeating Jihad, along with David Tafuri, a human rights attorney and former State Department official here in Washington. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. Sebastian, first to you. Should the FBI have seen this guy?
Given his travel records, we now know he was visiting Quetta. Quetta is the hotbed of Salafi jihadism. The Quetta Shura is based there. The fact that we have reports that he made anti-American statements here and homophobic statements, I think an interview or two would have been very, very wise.
From everything we can tell, David, the FBI did not interview him back then. As Sebastian mentioned, he did travel overseas to Afghanistan and Pakistan. Obviously, they tracked this guy down very quickly, but there seemed to be red flags along the way.
Yeah, there's an amazing similarity between Rahami and the Orlando bomber Mateen. Both were disaffected Muslims. Both were homegrown terrorists. Both came on the radar screen for the FBI. The FBI investigated both, but apparently the FBI concluded after investigating both that they did not think either of them were a threat to the U.S. That's where the FBI made a mistake. The FBI can't get into the minds of these homegrown terrorists, but we would hope the FBI will change its procedures and look at threats like this more closely.
But is it because there's a sensitivity, like an eggshells tiptoeing around about this issue?
There are several possible explanations why balls are being dropped in terms of national security. One is simply a manpower issue. The director of the FBI himself has said there are 900 cases they're investigating linked to ISIS alone in every state of the union. That's a huge labor-intensive exercise. Secondly, we have seen that there are certain sensitivities, a certain political matrix being forced upon our operators, our investigators, which isn't really often from the FBI. If you dig deeper in these cases where something was spotted and people are pushed back from the investigation, you saw this with Nidal Hasan, the Fort Hood shooter, the nexus of the political correctness that is pushed down is usually from the Department of Justice itself and from the Civil Rights Division. So it could be a case of somebody getting into the FBI's protocols and saying, no, we're not going to focus on this right now.
What about the political fallout here? This comes, we should point out that we believe that he came as a child at some point from Afghanistan, but it also comes in this back and forth about what to do about refugees. And it also comes a day after the Department of Homeland Security IG report that says some 858 people who were scheduled for deportation were actually given citizenship. Today we find out that number is really up to 1,800 individuals that the DHS gave, that the the citizenship was given to 1,800 plus individuals. What about the political fallout here?
Well, there is some political fallout. Now, you have to look at refugees. None of these homegrown terrorists are actually refugees, as far as we know. And so they did not come here as a part of the refugee resettlement process. And in fact, no refugee so far has committed terrorism in the United States. Let's specifically look at the Syrian refugees, who are a hot-button political topic right now. No Syrian refugee who has been resettled in the United States has committed terrorism. That doesn't mean that the U.S. government hasn't made mistakes with respect to immigration. And you pointed out a very important one, which we've allowed over 1,000 people to go from a list where they were supposed to be deported to somehow a different list, and they reapplied under a different name and were mistakenly admitted. That is a significant error that needs to be corrected. Luckily, the U.S. government has identified it and hopefully is correcting it very quickly.
But it shows the weakness in the system, Sebastian, and it I guess, reiterates or kind of backs up some of the things that Donald Trump talks about on the trail.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I just go to the chief law enforcement officer who's talked about this. Director Comey said, when you have people coming from a war zone like Syria that is not friendly to us, on the contrary, we're bombing them, there is no way to vet individuals from Syria because there's no database to vet them against. The Syrians aren't going to give us the data. So what's the other alternative? My parents were refugees. They escaped the dictatorship during the Cold War. There was no way to get information about who they were. So what happened? They spent weeks in a refugee camp undergoing counterintelligence interrogations to prove their bona fides. Again, incredibly labor-intensive protocols. Perhaps we don't have the capabilities.
But quickly, are you saying that you shouldn't be afraid of refugees coming in here in large numbers?
No. What I'm saying is we need to have a significant vetting process for refugees. And I'm glad Sebastian pointed out he's a refugee. Refugees have contributed a lot to this country. Donald Trump talked about how we defeated fascism in World War II. Part of the way we defeated it is we had refugees who contributed to the nuclear program that helped us get out of World War II. Refugees do contribute so much, and so far refugees have not been a source of terrorism. That doesn't mean we shouldn't continue to vet them significantly, but the refugee resettlement program has a significant vetting process. It takes 18 to 24 months to come here as a refugee. There are multiple interviews, there are background checks, and so far it has worked.
Politically, it seems like it's a hot-button issue in this election. Sebastian, David, thank you very much. Fair and balanced argument there.